Hey guys, it's quote unquote your boy, Ballface 8020, back again with another great commentary. So, before we get into this, I want to talk a little bit about the astrological sports picks. I still believe in astrology. I still believe in my astrological skills, my forecasting skills. I still believe in using astrology to make predictions. I still believe in using astrology to make sports predictions. What I no longer believe in is using astrology to predict specific games. I think that that's just, it involves, because to do it involves comparing two pretty imprecise charts. You're doing a chart of the whole city that's playing the game, and they're going to be playing this game on the same day at the same time, obviously. And you end up with two charts that are very similar, and it's very difficult to distinguish between the two and to know which aspects are going to have the more of an impact. So you could have a case where both teams have great charts or both teams have horrible charts, and it's about figuring out which one is better. And it's not easy. It's not what I'm used to doing. Um, when it comes to astrological predictions, I will be making a video making an astrological analysis of the 2024 general presidential election. And even if I'm wrong, you'll be able to, uh, because I don't mind being wrong. I don't mind being wrong. I don't mind people thinking that, knowing that I'm wrong. But when I'm wrong, I want people to know why I was wrong. I want to explain what my thinking was. So even if you think I'm an idiot and if you think astrology is bullshit and you don't trust any of my predictions, all of that stuff's fine. But the the prediction, the presidential predictions, there's going to be I'm going to back up everything that I say. And you can agree with it or disagree with it, but you'll at least be informed. Okay, but anyway, today we're going to talk about the economy. So in my most recent Ecopenomics video, I talked about how the dollar was on its way out, and I stand by that. And I was citing how this chart we have here is total credit outstanding. So that's all debt in the U.S. economy, state, local, federal, and private. This is not the debt as a percentage of the economy. This is the gross debt. I'm not really sure. I think in percentage of the economy, it's somewhere like 3.6 times GDP, which is way too high, but I'm not sure that number has meaningfully gone up. Way back in 21, maybe, I think it was 21, I expressed extreme skepticism about there being sustained major inflation. And it was one of those things where the prediction turned out to be wrong, but the rationale behind it, I still stand by, which was just that, without credit growth beyond, 4.5% a year, there's no real way for the U.S. to have over 2% inflation per year. Although that was incorrect. I would say 4% probably is the upper bound, unless the currency just starts to lose value overall, which that stuff could happen, but I didn't expect it to happen, and I don't think it is what happened. At least not in the main. I think what you saw was a delayed reaction to the credit growth for during COVID, which was greater than I expected it to be. Not the credit growth, the inflation that resulted from it. And then you also saw the credit. I was expecting credit growth to normalize. I thought credit growth was going to pre-COVID total credit in the United States was growing at about 4.5% a year. It went through the roof during the first 2 quarters of COVID, then was still high for a couple more quarters, but then it normalized, which is what I had predicted would happen, and I thought it would stay there. But that's not what happened. Instead, credit growth increased, and that's why you got that sort of mini boom last year. In particular, this thing right here, this part you're seeing here, where I've got the mouse cursor on, quarter three 2003 to quarter to the beginning of quarter four. So basically, for the third quarter of 23, total credit in the U.S. economy grew by over 7%, which is the highest it has been. It's just 1 quarter, obviously, but if that rate had been annualized, it would have been the highest since 2007. The U.S. economy cannot handle that kind of growth in credit anymore. If you go, that type of credit creation at that level is going to cause inflation with the amount of debt the U.S. already has in the system. Now, if you look to the quarter before that, you see here it grew about 5%, which is still higher. It's enough that you would be noticeably inflationary. But before that, you see credit growth had stalled. And this is where I was expecting recession. So this takes you up to the beginning of the second quarter of last year, a little bit over a year, about a year and 3 months ago at this point. That's where I and a lot of other people were predicting a recession would happen. That there would be a recession in the, May, June, around May is what was my official prediction was, and I wasn't the only one. May of 2023. So you see this thing here, it looks like it's going to happen. Generally, you're going to have slower credit growth equals recession. So it looks like we're headed to a recession, but then comes that shit with Silicon Valley Bank, and they really managed to goose credit growth for 2 quarters. And I don't know if it was because of the Silicon Valley Bank thing. I think that's what it was. I can't think of what else it would be. But here you see in the second quarter of 23, they get this burst in credit growth, and then it goes like not into warp drive, but much higher in the third quarter of 23. In the third quarter of 23 is also when we start seeing real recessionary indicators in the data, in the larger data sets that we have released. Not enough to make us think that we were in a recession then. I mean, some people, Daniela Martina Booth, or D. Martina Booth, however she says her name, she says that we entered a recession in October of last year. I don't believe that's the case. There is economic data that's suggestive of that, and certainly of some economic softness. I don't think we were actually in a recession of October of last year. However, so what you're seeing here, this credit growth is in the third quarter. So so July, August, September. July, August, September. So there's this, and she says recession started in October. Well, that does kind of match up with what we're seeing here, because in this part right here, the fourth quarter of 23, which would have started in October, you see total credit growth for the quarter at an annualized rate of under 3%. If credit in the U.S. economy grows at a total of under 3% a year, the U.S. will be in a recession. That's just the way that the U.S. economy is structured right now. So if it's just one quarter, then okay, no big deal. But if it's going to continue, then yeah, you're going to have a recession. And so it could be here that, well, and this is my thesis right now, that here, what's happening here in this quarter is in quarter 4 of 23, is what we thought was happening in quarter 2 of, or quarter 1 of 23. So what we thought was happening, and I think was happening in quarter 1 of 23, got pushed back 6 months and really started in quarter 4 of 23. So we don't have this data, which is I think the most important data set the Fed has, is released on a 6-month lag. So we don't know what the credit growth was in the first and second quarters. Now, my guess is it has been around here, this level. It's like still slow, it's still at stall speed, and perhaps even negative. I don't know, because, historically you could look at the M2 and use that as kind of like a metric to say, like, well, if the M2's declined by a lot, then maybe the regular credits decline. But that doesn't really work anymore due to like how much the Fed has printed. So the M2 is just useless, I think. You could try looking at the MZM, I guess, but I don't really trust that either, and I don't even know where to get that data set now because I think the Fed discontinued it. So unfortunately, so we are flying blind. We don't have the last 6 months of credit data. But if this trend continues, because when I made a video talking about the dollar being dead and there being like large scale inflation, I was saying, look at this increase here. This was due to the Fed trying to save the banks. This 7%, this 7.5% a year annualized growth rate is going to um, this rate is going to either maintain or even increase over the preceding quarters. That prediction was wrong. That was just flat out wrong because you can tell here, not only did it shrink, it shrunk to below normal. It's under 3%. Um, so now I'm saying the same. I think you're going to continue to see the decline of the decline in credit growth. Like, I don't know if we're going to see an. I mean, for all I know, we're already in an outright credit contraction. It's possible. I would guess probably not. But I would say that total credit creation stays at stall speed for a while. I mean, you have to keep in mind that the federal government is running a deficit of 5.5% GDP. So there's only so much credit creation can decline. You know, there I guess you could have big credit contractions, but I don't think so. Um, so when you look at all the data, though, especially like jobs, because that's basically what's the U.S. economy for a while has been in recession, except for two things: jobs and the stock market. And I guess you could say housing. So you got three things there. The stock market is just totally detached from the economy. So I don't even look at that as a relevant indicator. I don't care how the stock market's doing. Housing is declining. I don't know if it's the decline that we would necessarily expect from a recessionary level yet. That might come later. So that's like housing is like it's looking like a recessionary. It's not necessarily looking like a property bubble like it did in 2008, but or I guess that would be more 2005, but same idea. Um, so housing is I don't know if you want to call it recessionary or not. I think housing you could reasonably say is recessionary, but that one's a little less clearer. And then there's unemployment. Now, the establishment survey, that's like the survey the BLS releases about how many jobs are created each month. That continues to have blockbuster numbers. However, the household survey, the one that just, which is, I mean, technically they're estimating the same thing, how many jobs are growing, but the establishment survey had job growth last month being almost 300,000, whereas the establishment survey had jobs declining by 400,000. Um, and more importantly, it had the unemployment rate going up to 4%, which is about, I think if the unemployment had bottomed at like 3.4%, like you would expect us to be at a recession when unemployment hits 4.2%. It's called the SAM rule. I'm not sure exactly how it works, um, but we could very well get that into be in a few months. And sometimes you don't see like in the 1970s recessions, you didn't see job losses start net job losses start until 9 months after the recession started. And in 2008, the net job losses didn't start until 2 or 3 months until after the recession had started. So I think that right now it's reasonable to believe that we are currently in a recession, that we were currently I mean, I don't expect them to announce that now, but like at a year and a half from now, they backdate the recession to having started sometime in the second quarter of this year. So, you know, May, April, June. I mean, April, May, June. I'm sorry. May, April, yeah, April, May. Wait a minute. January, February, March, April, May, June. So we're actually technically still in the second quarter. So maybe they're going to say it starts this month. I don't know. I've been wrong before. I've overestimated this stuff because in this recession has been the most delayed recession ever. It just like the indicators hit last year. I mean, the year before last said that we were going to be in a recession in some time between May and October of last year. That's what the indicators said. And it didn't happen, I guess, for several reasons. One of the reasons was because of all the excess savings built up during COVID. Each cycle is a little bit different. Um, so you don't know. I mean, I absolutely didn't think they would be able to sustain it as long as they have. And not even close to as long as they have. I mean, this has gone years longer than I initially expected. And it's gone at least a year longer than the data suggested it would. Um, assuming that we're not in a recession already. I think we are, but I'm not certain. So I'm not going to say it's for absolutely sure we're in a recession, but gun to my head, if you ask me, are we in a recession? I would say yes. I would say yes, we entered a recession sometime this quarter. That's all for now. See you in the next.